Alright everyone, the DS re-release of Chrono Trigger is now in stores, so I recommend you buy it, lest I do horrible, horrible things to you. Horrible things. But anyway, today's anime review has our intrepid hero, or at least me, walking into the mystical land of shoujo, which is sort of like a high school sitcom, but with more teen angst. The subject this time is the anime Vampire Knight, the name of which is somewhat misleading since it's the army kind of knight, not the dark and chilly kind, and while there are vampires everywhere, there aren't any medieval soldiers in sight. Now, right off the bat, the series is actually made up of two separate serializations, with 13 episodes of Vampire Knight that ended with To Be Continued, followed later by a sequel series called Vampire Knight Guilty. Why they bothered to split it up into two different shows instead of just having the first one be a full season, I have no idea. Maybe they ran into business problems or something, or maybe they did it on purpose. I didn't really bother to find out. But it seemed rather unnecessary to me. However, for the sake of this review, I'll be referring to them as one series, and just so you know, this is one of those shoujos. The ones that star a cast full of bishis, wistful pretty types, who spend 80% of their time drowning in angst. Also, so you know, angst is today's word of the day. The show begins with the premise of a certain exclusive high school that has some rather unusual rules. The students are all split up into day class and night class groups, with the day class being composed of 95% females and the night class composed of 95% incredibly delicious males. The oddest rule to this being that the two groups of students are basically forbidden to interact with each other save when the night class gets to walk across campus. Why do this? Because unbeknownst to almost everybody, the night class students are all actually vampires. The point being that apparently vampires and humans used to fight a lot, but now they're trying to make nice, so this mysterious high school full of 16-year-old girls and 600-year-old vamps is supposed to be some kind of petri dish experiment to prove that they could live together and get along. The main character of the show is this girl, Yuki Cross, who does the job of prefect, which is apparently a glorified hall monitor or something, and is the adopted daughter of the ex-vampire hunter and now principal, Mr. Cross, who does happen to be an entertainingly goofy and doting anime dad. Yuki's big backstory is that 10 years ago when she was little, a bad vampire attacked her and killed her parents. But before it killed her too, a good vampire came and saved her. This good vampire was Yuki and Kaname, one of the pure-blood noble people of Dracula Land. But we'll get back to him later. Side note, this happened on a fatefully snowy night and Yuki's name means snow, so there's your obligatory anime main character name connection. But anyway, Yuki spent most of her childhood hanging around with and idolizing her heroic Kuran, who also happens to be the head of the entire night class, so of course she is one of the few people who knows that they're vampires, and she of course has this massive crush on him that she won't say out loud but will narrate to the audience on a regular basis and anyone with at least one working eyeball can see. Yuki also spent her childhood hanging around with the show's other main character, Zero! No, wait, yeah, okay, I already used that joke. Anyway, his name is Zero Kiryu, or as I like to call him, Captain Angst. Besides being one of the only two males in the day class and the only student allowed to carry a gun on campus, Zero also works as a prefect alongside Yuki. His backstory is that his parents were vampire hunters who, like Yuki's parents, got killed by vampires. And while he managed to escape and was also taken in by Mr. Cross, he really hates vampires and it pisses him off that Yuki has an obvious crush on one. Very early in the show he gets bitten by a crazy low-blooded vampire that they call a level E, and most of the first half revolves around him really not wanting to turn into one and them trying to find a way to stop it. Zero is one of those quiet, brooding types who, no matter how much the girly character tries to help him, will never admit that he needs it, and I imagine has an inner voice that goes, "Why won't anyone love me even though I'll only push them away?" Anywho, the third and final main character of the show is the aforementioned Kurin, who if he had a theme song would probably go, "Webble splash, you sexy mother..." Kurin is apparently some kind of vampire royalty since every other vampire in the show has an extreme respect and or fear of him and will do pretty much whatever he says. He knows damn well that Yuki wants him and it seems as though he wants her too, though for most of the show it appears he's too busy being aloof, mysterious, and symbolically unobtainable. And seeing as I'm not the type of person to spend all day staring at his pretty, I actually found him rather boring, since he rarely and briefly ever emotes, and I often got the feeling that he was supposed to be doing something important to the story, but just didn't feel like doing it. Besides the main bunch, there's also the rest of the night class, who pop in every now and then to do what Kurin tells them and then leave. and they've got some rather cheesy names like Aido and Akatsuki. There's also Zero's twin brother Ichiru, who shows up out of nowhere soap opera style and plays the role of minor villain and jealous little brother. Ah, I see what you did there. Get it? Zero, Ichiru? Yeah. You know, that reminds me of the Michigan-Ohio territory conflict, the only casualty of which was a guy named 2 who went to a bar with his brother 1 and got in a fight. Also reminds me of the moment in DBZ when somebody asked 18 if that's really her name and she responds, "My father was pretty dull." To which I responded he couldn't have been that dull if he got up to 18. But I'm getting off topic. Actually, I felt that the introduction of Ichiru really brought the show down. He's such a stapled-on, tactless character, and the only reason he seems to be around is so that they can talk about the twins' curse, which even though they keep mentioning it and the show is 4/5 of the way through, we still have no idea what the hell it is. Now, in case you hadn't noticed already, I wasn't too thrilled with this show. The story is rather slow-paced and revolves almost entirely around the love triangle between Yuki, Zero, and Kurin. Now, it does have its share of other factors, what with strange conspiracies and this heterochromed body-possessing villain, but these concepts are often ignored and used as backdrops or even just afterthoughts to the show's true mission, which seems to be to generate as much relationship pairing fan art as possible. The result being a storyline that isn't filled out very well and just obsesses over a single set of character interactions. And I do mean single set, since the roles of the three main characters are very set in place, and they change little over the course of the show. Zero provides the angst, Kurin provides the hotness, and Yuki provides the constant sense of confusion and indecisiveness over which one she wants to have erotically suggestive blood-sucking scenes with. Kinky. And it's not like the other elements of the story don't have potential. They just aren't used to it. I mean, for one, these aren't the classic turn into bats and hypnotize you vampires, since apparently each one of them has a different superpower. One controls fire, one can freeze things, and another can use his blood as some kind of whip weapon thing. But each of these examples will pop in for a single and brief time, be used to achieve no real results of any kind, and then never be seen or mentioned ever again. And they had some good ideas in here to round out the plot, but while they keep talking about them from time to time, they refuse to actually go anywhere with these ideas or really develop them at all. And this is one of those shows where, while watching it, I kept glancing at the timer on the video player, wondering if it was done yet or if they were ever going to get on with it already. Anywho, the production of the show isn't bad. Not particularly good, mind you, just not bad. The animation as a whole is pretty average, though with all the action and comedy that's not happening in this, how much of a budget do you really need? The music goes for a lot of slow, gothic melodies and dramatic suspense, but it barely stands out among anything else the production offers. The voices are decent and the casting is fine. It works for the show, but as I said, everyone pretty much only has one tone and one emotion that they have to portray, so in that aspect, they'd better be able to get it right. Overall, Vampire Knight is a series that has a very clear target of who it's aimed at, and that audience can be summed up in the first few episodes of the show, which, while watching, I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to make it through the whole thing, since they're composed of several scenes where the Knight class, who may as well be the vampire Beatles, stroll through the campus while every teenage female in a mile radius clusters about them and loses their minds, causing Yuki to struggle at what can only be described as using a chair and a whip to beat back the sea of screeching estrogen that has formed around the Knight class in their sexy parade. In fact, this show is now very easily relatable as the anime parallel to the movie Twilight. As in, it's a series about high school Nosferatu romance that is very drug out and fairly overrated, mostly due to its target crowd of 14-year-old starry-eyed girls who obsess over it like a boy band because vampires are hot. Well, okay, maybe I'm being a bit too mean to it here. After all, Twilight sucked, whereas Vampire Knight is just kind of meh. Now, if you liked this show, I'm not that mad at you, and I will admit that for what it is, it's not that bad, and for what it is, it's actually better than most. But what it is an industrial-strength can of pretentiousness, and to me it strikes as something that could have been better than it was. There are only a few episodes left in the show, and I hope that the ending at least brings everything full circle. That way there was at least some purpose to having the villains and conspiracies in it, and if the author had just put down the cheesy Fabio romance novel long enough to work on filling out the actual story, it could have been pretty good. But they didn't. So it's not. And if you want lovey-dovey vampires, I'd tell you to watch Blood Plus instead. Thank you, and good night.